Thanks, Kobe, for being with us again on Talking Tech.
Thank you.
We've done an interview before. We've got a lot of research on our website, so we won't go into sort of the high-level stuff for Weebit Nano, as in what you guys do. And so I think it's good to just dig straight into the fun stuff, which I think is on the technology side, of course. You recently extended your agreement with Leti in terms of process optimization. Can you talk us through that? What it means, why it's necessary, and the sort of the timelines for that?
Okay. So we're moving along very nicely on the technology development. We announced that we had the 4K array at 40 nanometers. We're expecting to reach our milestone of a megabit array by the middle of the year. And there's always the next step. So you want to once you have the basic array, now you need to bring it to production quality. So there are many different parameters that you need to think of, retention, endurance, read speed, etc., etc. So we need to just bring all of those parameters to the level that's needed for production, and that's basically the next step. So we're already prepared with Leti to move on and improve those parameters as we start looking at going to productization.
In your recent presentation, investor presentation, you outlined the roadmap for commercialization through 2021. Can you talk us through that roadmap?
Yeah. So basically, we were talking about improving the baseline parameters. In semiconductor, everything takes a long time, right? Yeah. You're really dealing with aligning those atoms in the right place, and every layer is so thin and so on. So there's a lot of work on that. Once we get that done. And in parallel, we're actually going to start looking at the 28 nanometer, but the next step will be to start transferring the data to a production fab. Leti is a great fab, and they have all the right equipment that's in the production fabs, but it's not a production fab, and every fab has their little tweaks on the way they use the specific machinery and so on. So there's what's called a qualification process, where you need to adapt to that production fab. So that's going to be the following step. These things take time. By the end of 2020, we expect to be at the point where we can start production in the fabs.
Right. And so you mentioned you're moving towards 28 nanometers as well. The 40 nanometers basically sort of the par for non-volatile. What's the reason to move to 28 nanometers?
Actually, interestingly enough, the 40 nanometers, since we're not really a transistor, we're a resistor, when we checked, we saw that it can fit on 28 nanometer designs already as it is, and maybe even below. But the industry always moves forward. It's always shrinking. Everyone's expecting smaller and smaller cells. So we're already looking ahead, and in parallel to getting the 40 nanometer out to production, we definitely want to be ready with the 28 nanometer.
Right, and so that node would be specifically for embedded, whereas 40 nanometers could be considered, well, maybe that's for storage class, but 28, I guess, is predominantly for embedded.
Well, yes, actually both of them will end up being for embedded. We're initially looking at the embedded market just because that's the fastest path to revenue. So, as a public company, everyone's waiting to see some revenues. And the embedded path is the faster one. We're definitely looking at storage class memory and having single chips as well, and that's down the line going to be the next step. So
okay. Speaking of revenues, looking at your pipeline, or sorry, at the roadmap, that sort of talks about 2021 for revenues to come in from the technology. Is there any scope to get in revenues sooner than that, maybe from NRE, that sort of thing?
Exactly. I think that's one of the things, and maybe even in the presentation I should have made a note, because not everyone is aware of the business model that's used in IP licensing. In the embedded world, you basically do IP licensing, and those kinds of deals are made up of two parts. There's non-recurrent engineering, where the customer basically comes to you and says, okay, we need a memory with these very specific parameters. We need these many ports to the memory. We need, this size and whatever. And you need to adapt your memory to their needs. So that's something that's done when they are planning their design. So if they are planning to ship out in 2021, they start, a year or however time earlier to start planning the memory that needs to go in, and we need to be talking to them and doing that together. So there's actually a potential for NRE payments coming in. Even I'm expecting next year to start having NRE payments, and after that, when they get to production, then you get royalties on a per chip basis. Right. Now, by the way, one of the things that's common in this industry is, especially for a startup, you kind of go to the customer and say, hey, how about you pay us a little bit more NRE, maybe a little bit earlier, and then we'll give you a discount on the royalties. We want more money now. Yeah. They would like to cut down the royalties, so it kind of works best for both.
Yeah. And so focusing on that near term, the status of the 1 megabit array, can you talk a little bit about that? Because you've always sort of, very neatly sort of achieved the goals within the time frame you set, and in a lot of cases actually earlier. What's the status of the 1 megabit array, if you can talk about that?
We're definitely working hard on it. If it were ready, we would already be announcing it. So, but as we said in the press release, we're on track to meet the milestone of having it ready by mid-year. And I think, things are looking good.
Okay, excellent. A while back, you also mentioned that there is potential, as you move the technology forward, to get engaged in strategic discussions with industry players. Can you update us a bit on that?
Yeah, definitely. We're, as I mentioned, we want to start talking to customers about initial NREs and starting to look at the memories. We've been having many meetings with many of the tier 1 players in the consumer space, cell phones and mobile and IoT and whatever. We've been talking to players in the memory space, potential partners and in additional domains. So we've been having a lot of meetings. There's a lot of interest in our technology. Of course, people are waiting to see the megabit array. They're waiting to see the progress on the technology. But I'm very encouraged by the interest level. I have to say that we're looking. Weebit is really a company that's looking to become a major player in the market, and not even just non-volatile in the memory market. So there are a lot of interesting things that are coming up in terms of potential partnerships, using different technologies that can actually enhance our technology and give it a boost and so on. So, a lot of different discussions. Nothing to disclose yet. It's still early phases, but...
okay. Well, sounds good. And lastly then, on the board, so you added a few heavyweights recently. I was particularly impressed with Yoav Nissan-Cohen's background and the fact that he's joined you guys, given his background in non-volatile. What specifically attracted him to Weebit's technology to make him want to join?
Well, actually, I am extremely proud of our board and management team because it's exceptional. You don't see this kind of caliber of people in startups very often. Beyond Dadi, of course, our chairman, I guess number 2 at Intel for a long time. He basically managed the Pentium from the day of its inception until recently. So we're very, very proud of Dadi as our chairman, and now
a lot of mentions in Startup Nation as well. In the book,
as people say, when Dadi calls someone in the semiconductor world, they pick up the phone. It's
that's good.
So that's great. And Dadi called Yoav and asked him to join us. And I was extremely flattered that Yoav, he did his due diligence. He went around, he checked the company. It's not like he just came and he joined us. Yoav has an amazing background. It started when he did his PhD with Dov Fruman. Dov was one of the founding team of Intel, and he's the guy who invented non-volatile memories. So he's the guy who invented the very first non-volatile memory. and he had two students doing their PhD there. One was Eli Harari, who ended up starting SanDisk, and Yoav. And Yoav actually worked with me at National Semiconductor back in the 80s, when National decided it wanted to shut down its fab in Israel. And Yoav said, that's insane, that doesn't make any sense. So he actually went and set up investors and customers and the government and everything, so that he managed to basically spin out that fab and create Tower Semiconductor.
Right.
So Tower is today one of the very interesting fabs, maybe tier 2 fab, but in specialized domains. It's actually the leading fab. He ended up being the CEO there for just about 10 years. And after that, I mean, setting up a fab is a big thing. You had to get $1.5 billion to set up the fab then.
Even more these
days. So, I mean, that was an amazing job that he did. Later on, he joined the VC community in Israel. He started several startups, including in the memory domain, like Saifan. And so he has both a very deep understanding of memories and non-volatile memories, and on the other hand, the business side, and he has obviously the business contacts. And the best thing is that he joined us as an executive director. So
he's getting his hands
he's actually working with us, part-time, helping us on the R&D side, on the technology side. Yeah. It's amazing. I'm really very, very proud. I think the board that we have, the management team that we have, is the best thing to show just how serious this company is. We are, this kind of team doesn't assemble just for doing something small. We're really looking at becoming a major player. We're looking at expanding as we go down the road, expanding in the memory domain, and I think exciting times are ahead of us.
So with Yoav's connections, even SanDisk is just one phone call away, really.
Yeah, obviously he called Eli Harari to also consult him as part of his due diligence to join Weebit. He has amazing connections within the memory space and within the foundry space. We're going to be going to production fabs, and he knows the fabs, he knows the fab equipment suppliers, and it's
excellent.
Very exciting.
Yeah, good stuff, Kobi. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.